Hi, this is the PowerPoint lecture in Bettering Your BATNA in the CCV Conflict Resolution class. What is your BATNA? Your BATNA is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Remember that the reason we attempt to resolve a conflict is to get you to a better outcome, and a BATNA is all about improving your own outcome by focusing on the things that you have control over rather than the things the other side has control over. So improving or bettering your BATNA is your route to improve your options, give you more control over the outcome, reduce your sense of anxiety about the conflict, and reduce the power that the other side has over you. So how can you better your BATNA? First, you can take the time to focus on your own present position. So we're going to look at a basic workplace situation. Your work is awful, hate your boss hates you, coworkers stab you in the back, usual bad work situation. So remember, first of all, this is only your position for the moment. There are always options to change that position. Now, some of them aren't good. If you're going to quit work, never work again, you're going to wind up out on the street, homeless and starving because you don't have an income. That's an option. It's just not a good option. So bettering your BATNA means creating good options. Start by identifying your weaknesses. Now, just as when we were talking about listening to someone else in a conflict and how you should try to not react emotionally, but just let yourself sink into hearing what they have to say and then pausing and trying to look at it from a problem-solving mode, you need to do that with yourself here. You're going to identify your weaknesses factually and with precision, but from a problem-solving mode, and this is not easy, but try not to let the anxiety and the fear and the emotions get in the way of thinking like, oh, I'll never work again, I can't do this, try not to let that fear dominate your thought process here. Look at it factually and objectively. Write it down with pencil and paper. Your weaknesses are the powers that your bosses and co-workers hold over you. In a basic bad employment situation, the initial weakness is the fact that you need an income. It's really good to identify exactly what it is that you do need for an income, because that helps to prescribe the parameters of what your options are. Now, everyone's going to be different on this in terms of what they define as a need. So no judgment here. And if, someone defines their need as including the need to put away X amount of money for, retirement or a yacht or whatever it may be, and someone else's needs are, being able to eat and keep a roof over your head. Everyone's going to be in a different position, and we can only start with where we are in life and where we are in this conflict in terms of how we define things. Your weaknesses may include that sense of feeling stuck or lack of options. Again, there's always an option. We're looking for good options. But what are some of the things that make you feel there aren't options? Is the economy bad, so there aren't a lot of other jobs? Do you not have the skills or education for a higher paying position? Do you need to, are you constrained where you can't move out of your present town due to, kids in school or elders you're taking care of? What are the constraints on your options? And then consider what you're most afraid of. What's terrifying you about this situation? If you're going to get fired or the business is going to fold, you don't know how you're going to eat or pay the rent next month because you don't have a dime. You've been living paycheck to paycheck. Very common situation and very anxiety and fear producing. Once you've factually identified your weaknesses, you can build on your strengths. So brainstorm ways to convert the weaknesses to strengths, or at least reduce those weaknesses and then build on them. So you're looking at the income that you need that you've set out in a very factual and unemotional way. Is it possible to reduce your bills? Is it possible to create another income stream? I'm always advising friends to create another income stream, even if it's just a small one from a hobby or walking dogs or house sitting or Airbnb-ing out a room. There are costs to that, of course, in terms of time, energy, exhaustion, time away from your family, other opportunity costs. But if you're in a really bad situation and you need to get out of it, remember you're just looking, short term until you get out of it, and you need to weigh those possibilities. Can you improve your employability? Can you take classes, training in a new skill? network, reach out to colleagues, employers, friends from high school, and get together for coffee and say, hey, how's it working where you're working? Because where I'm working is not so good. Are there any possible expansions where you are? Got any good ideas for me? Is your cousin hiring in this other business? Great way to expand your employability. And then what can you do to reduce those really points of fear or terror in this? If it's that you're living paycheck to paycheck, trying to get some money in the bank is a very valuable way to improve your BATNA. And I know, again, it's really hard. It's virtually, it feels impossible. It feels very daunting. But even having, $100 in the bank gives you a range of options that you don't have if you don't have it. So, any possible way that you can do that, even in a tiny amount, even the smallest amount that you can improve your BATNA, is going to reduce the power that the other side has over you in this conflict. So anything at all that you can do in that is better than nothing. Consider the other side's BATNA. Are they strong or weak? Do they have options? How does that fit together with your BATNA? In an employment situation, is money tight for the employer? Are we in an unemployment situation where there's 10,000 people waiting to take your job at lower pay if you leave? That, is a really strong BATNA position for your employer. Or do you have specialized skills and experience that are hard to replace? Remember that advertising and interviewing and onboarding someone new is a time-consuming and expensive process. So to that extent, you've got a little leverage over your employer. That's they know if you leave, they're going to have to go through that, and that's worth something to them. Look at who's got the authority here. Is this a local owner of the business? Does the manager have a lot of authority and they're local? Or is it corporate and, decisions can't get made local, so there's really not a lot to talk about in terms of the job conditions locally? Good things to know and think about before you embark on a conversation with them. So just imagine, if you will, when we're talking about improving your BATNA, imagine walking into a negotiation with your boss in a weak BATNA versus a strong BATNA position. So if you're going in to talk to your boss about these bad work conditions, but you're terrified of losing the job, you've got zero money in the bank, your car needs a huge repair, you're supporting a family and the family has no other income, then that employer has a lot of power over you because you got to do what you got to do to keep that job, even if it's just awful. All right, if you've got a strong BATNA, so that you've talked to people about other work possibilities, you've got some ideas about that, some places you are thinking about applying, you've got a little bit of money coming in from some other income stream, you got enough money in the bank maybe to get through, if this negotiation blows up, you can get through a week or two without worrying about it, or can pay to get your car fixed, then you're in a very different position walking into that office for this negotiation. Then you can either negotiate or exercise your BATNA. Okay, if you've developed strong options, if you've developed a really strong BATNA here, you can walk into that negotiation and say, look, I liked working here when I first came here. There's now all these tensions. It's very unpleasant. I'm not enjoying it. Here are some things I think, that we could fix and get back to where I really liked working here, and it worked for you and it worked for me. And, we were all, my colleagues all had a great atmosphere here. And if we can resolve these, I'd love to stay, but I do have other options. So if we can't, work this out, I'll understand and I'll move on. Remember to come in, offering if you do want to make the effort to stay there, come in offering your employer things that will meet their needs while maybe expanding your job duties and reducing the conflicts at work. Hey, everybody's fighting over the schedule. I know you hate doing it because everyone's yelling at you. I've recently taken a management class, at CCV, or gotten a certificate in management. And, I've been looking at how this schedule works and what if I took over the shift scheduling, and that takes it off of your shoulders. And, I think that that would warrant getting paid a little more. Why don't we try it for 2 weeks, see what you think? Something like that. Remember, there are larger options in the employment situation, so explore and be mindful of your legal rights and in a workplace conflict. Many workplace conflicts are just personalities and stresses between coworkers, or it's perhaps in a small business or family business, and perhaps these other regulations are not applicable. But a lot of workplace conflicts involve legal rights. There's wage and hour laws, occupational health and safety laws, discrimination laws. So you can improve your BATNA by learning about these rights. And if those rights are not being respected at your workplace, to contact the appropriate state authorities. This is an example of bringing in those objective criteria. If there's an OSHA standard that says you don't have to, that you should be wearing safety masks or respirators or something, and that's not happening at your workplace, that's not just a workplace conflict, that's a violation of an objective standard, and your workplace should be held accountable to it. And then employees also, most employees have a right of collective bargaining in the US. That is, you can band together to negotiate with your employer, whether through a union or simply as a group of coworkers. So if the conflicts in your workplace aren't just, the personalities of coworkers, but rather are very clearly problems between the employees and the management, learn about your collective bargaining rights. That's also a way of improving your BATNA in the workplace. So, in conclusion, better your BATNA. You have a good deal of control over your own relative strengths and weaknesses in a conflict. So, identify and minimize your weaknesses, and then build on your strengths to improve your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Again, even tiny improvements, even the smallest improvements you can make, even if it seems virtually impossible because you're, really stressed and working flat out and living paycheck to paycheck, even very small improvements in your BATNA begin to give you more control over the situation and reduce the power that other folks have over you, and can help you to expand the options for resolving your conflict.